Sir, very good evening. Others can mute yourself. Very good evening to all ladies and gentlemen. It gives us a great pleasure to invite you to this webinar session. To begin with, I have our Mr. J. Seelan, Chairman of Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, to formally give a welcome remarks. Sir, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me an immense pleasure to welcome all the participants to this knowledge session on intellectual property rights, generating and monetizing intellectual property assets, maximizing returns in life sciences. Indo-American Chamber of Commerce is glad to collaborate with K&S Partners and British Business Group in putting together this informative session for our members and invitees. On behalf of IACC, I welcome all of you for this meeting and a formal good evening to everybody. My hearty welcome to Mr. N. Padmanabhan, Chairman, British Business Group, Coimbatore Chapter. And all the expert panel members, each one of them would be introduced in detail. Here, I welcome Dr. Goutam Bhattacharyya, Partner and Head, K&S Partners, Mr. Samrat Ganguly, Associate, K&S Partners, Mr. Loren Hulse, Partner, Holland and Hart LLP, Dr. Adrian Bradley, Partner, Cleveland, Scott York. So, my special welcome to all the board members of IACC, all the members, delegates, Secretarial Office, and particularly special mention about Mrs. Sujata Ravishankar, who has coordinated all this program. For the benefit of the panelists and few invitees who had joined, a few words about IACC. As you all know well, the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce was established in India in 1968. Is the apex bilateral chamber synergizing India-US economic engagement. The major objective of IACC is to promote bilateral trade, investment and technology transfer, facilitates business collaborations, joint ventures, marketing tie-ups and strategic alliances through a set of proactive business-oriented initiatives. We also coordinate on behalf of our member with the state government, central government, US Embassy and other relevant forum to represent the benefit of IACC members. IACC member companies are also involved in a cross section of business domains such as manufacturing, engineering, construction, consumer goods, electronics, IT, pharmaceutical, healthcare, services, tourism, etc. The geographical spread of IACC is unique as it operates through 10 offices located throughout the country, registered office in Mumbai, regional offices in Kolkata, Delhi, Chennai, and offices in Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Cochin, Hyderabad, Pune, and Varanasi. Please refer also to the website for further details. And as far as the today's session is concerned, as we all know, intellectual property rights or IPR are the real assets for any organization, and rest of the other things are all mostly overheads. So the real assets is IPR. So we have a very balanced, experienced, expertised panelist with us, and we are going to have a wonderful session on the IPR, and whatever gaps the members or the delegates are having can be answered through the question and answer. If not, later the IACC can coordinate and get the relevant replies for all of you. With these few words, I welcome you all once again and request the participants to raise your queries through chat box to make this very interactive and informative session. All the best, and I'm handing over to Sujata Ravishankar for the further proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Just for the benefit of audience, Mr. J. Seelan is the chairman for the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce Tamil Nadu branch. He is also the promoter and director of various pharma companies like Nure Chemicals, Cymera Innoform, Delvin Formulations, Hybro Healthcare, etc. He is also the chairman for Indian Drugs Manufacturing Association for Tamil Nadu, Pondicherry, and Kerala. Mr. Jay Seelan is also the president for Tamil Nadu State Pharmacy Council, and he is the national vice president for Indian Pharmaceutical Association. He holds quite a bit of trade association titles with him as well. So thank you so much for your initial welcome remarks. With this, now I take the opportunity to invite our partner, Mr. Padmanabhan, Mr. M.N. Padmanabhan, who is the chairman for the British Business Group of Coimbatore chapter. Mr. Padmanabhan is also the managing director of Lakshana Tex Coimbatore and Bangalore, and managing director of Madhavalakshmi Mills Coimbatore. He is the governing general committee member of Indian Chamber of Commerce, and he also holds several positions in various other trade associations. So, sir, with these few words, now we would like to invite you to briefly give your remarks. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Sujata, and good evening to all. It's a great proud and privilege of British Business Group. As a chairman, I represent the Coimbatore chapter. Thank you for giving this opportunity to join you all with this evening, great evening. So the BBG inaugurated by Mr. Paul on 20th August, who heads the trade and investment for UK in India. Later, Mr. Oliver, the Deputy High Commission, was the chief guest on the first event. BBG jointly hosted the British High Commission on February 13th. Its activities are promoting trade between UK and India in the region of Coimbatore, Nilgiris, Madurai, Pollachi, and Tirupur to advertise and connect the business from this region to the British High Commission. British High Commission is also jointly with the British Business Group and encourage the trades, business, and educationals and medicals. All these things includes in the Coimbatore chapter. Coimbatore is, as Mr. Jayaseelan knows, Coimbatore is one of the medical hub of Tamil Nadu. So it all connected with all medicals and other things, and the property, intellectual properties also, assets also, they would like to mention. So with these few words, I thank each and everybody. I thank Mr. Jayaseelan and Mr. Adrian Bradley and Samrat Ganguly and Loren Hulse, Goutam Bhattacharyya, each and everybody of this panel. And I thank the British Business Group Coimbatore chapter members for joining me for this event for the webinar. Thank you, Sujata, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
So thank you very much for this. So let's move on to the session formally. Now we have with us, I would like to just initiate with Dr. Goutam Bhattacharyya to begin with, who is the partner and head patents. I will just do a quick introduction of the panel members and then hand it over to Goutam Bhattacharyya, who will moderate the session as well. Dr. Goutam is a patent attorney and heads the Hyderabad office of the firm. He handles patent drafting and prosecution in the fields of life sciences. Dr. Goutam also represents several multinational and domestic corporations on a variety of IP issues and works very closely with several startups and spin-offs. Besides patents drafting and prosecution, he has been an active in IP awareness creation amongst the universities, incubation centers, and MSMEs. Goutam serves as a member of several institutional committees of national institutes, including National Institute of Pathology and National Institute of Immunology. He holds achievements and honors. IIM Strategy 300, the world's leading IP strategist, ranked in 2019. And Goutam knows English, Hindi, and Bengali. So our next panel member is Mr. Samrat Ganguly. He is the Associate Patents, Biotechnology and Biosciences from K&S Partners. Samrat is a registered patent agent and based out of Hyderabad office. He handles patent drafting and prosecution in the life sciences domain. Samrat also advises clients on patentability, freedom to operate, invalidity and infringement analysis, technology licensing, and the Biological Diversity Act of India. He has a professional membership with the Bar Council of Telangana. And of course, Samrat also speaks English, Hindi, and Bengali. Our next panelist is Mr. Loren Hulse, partner of Holland, Hart and LLP. Loren delivers sophisticated counsel in the creation, management, and protection of domestic and foreign patent and trademark portfolios to companies disrupting the life sciences, chemical, pharmaceutical, biotech, manufacturing, and medical device industries. From his experience, I was working as a former in-house intellectual property counsel for NP's Pharmaceuticals and as a patent counsel for Ceramatic Incorporation. Loren understands the business imperative to create robust protection strategies while managing patent and trademark portfolios that align with corporate priorities. Before joining Holland Hart, Loren was a partner at Stoel Rives, where he served as the co-leader of the firm's life sciences industry group. Finally, we have Dr. Adrian Bradley, partner Cleveland Scott York. Dr. Bradley is a partner in the company, and his practice is devoted to helping clients achieve their strategic goals by devising and implementing intellectual property strategies and support them. He has a particular interest in technology transfer, regularly advising academic institutions around the world on obtaining effective protection for their innovative through patents. Participants, these are all few words about the panel members. However, you will have their profile, which were already sent across, and it is also available on the handouts, which you can view it. Dr. Bradley is a member of the Business Advisory Board of the Institute of Organic Chemistry and Biochemistry in the Czech Republic. He is a visiting lecturer at the University of Reading and has delivered many seminars and lectures. With this few basic introductions, I think Goutam will hand it over to you. Dr. Goutam Bhattacharyya will set the content and he will moderate the session going forward. Thank you.
Muted, Goutam.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Adrian. So thanks a lot, Sujata, and welcome all to the session today organized by IACC jointly with British Group. To set the context, let me say the concept of intellectual property goes back to the time immemorial. I'll give you an example. The southern city of Italy, which is the name is Sybaris. In 500 BC, they had a concept of intellectual property where people used to get about a year of exclusivity on refinement in luxury developed by them. So in the modern world, intellectual property rights have a significant influence on the international and indigenous trade of every nation. With the advent of digitization, there are high chances of creative ideas being stolen by any third party without any prior permission. To draw an analogy, unlike any tangible asset which can be locked in, fenced in, or nailed down, intangible asset in contrast are always publicly available and can be easily copied or imitated by everyone. This is one of the reasons why IP is needed. In fact, there are many more. So IP means different things for different people. Legally speaking, IP is a right. For CFO, it is an asset. For the marketing team, it is a promise. For a customer, a set of emotion and ideas which they associate with the company. So effective IP protection and most importantly, leveraging the IP are the key to success. Today, the panel will discuss the various aspects of robust IP creation and protection. So what we have done, we have divided the entire discussion into two different heads. One is the IP creation, and where we have several discussion point, and second is IP transaction, where we will discuss about the leveraging part, optimizing the cost, strategy of IP, different strategies of IP to reduce the cost and other things. So the first question I would like to ask uh, is non-creation of IP is a disaster for innovation-driven industries. So I would request Adrian to share his thoughts, and thereafter Loren can share his thought. And over to Adrian.
Thank you very much, Goutam, for the introduction. And thank you to Mr. Jayasilan and Mr. Padmanabhan and the Anglo-Indian Chamber of Commerce and the British Business Group for supporting the event. It's wonderful to be here. I'm very thrilled to be in this distinguished company. So the question that you have referred to me is an interesting one, how non-creation of IP is a disaster for innovative companies. And the very simple answer is that in the absence of intellectual property protection, being an innovator is a disadvantage. So if you are an innovative company, you are devoting resources to innovation. You are devoting financial and human resources to creation, to research and development. And if you do not protect the fruits of those investments, then your competitors can simply copy them, and they do not have to bear that cost. So you're automatically placing your competitors at a significant advantage by not properly protecting what you have invented, what you have developed. The other issue is that particularly in the life sciences sector, intellectual property is the currency with which transactions are conducted. So in order to talk to international partners, to talk to investors, to talk to licensees, they will want to see what you are dealing with. And what you are dealing with generally is enshrined in your formal intellectual property and the people. So these are the things that potential partners will want to assess. The people they can assess for themselves just by talking to you, but the intellectual property, that is the nucleus of the output of your research, and unless that is properly formalized and drafted in the first place, then you really have got nothing to negotiate with. So once people shift in mindset from seeing intellectual property as being a cost to being an investment, I think that is a fundamental shift in thinking that needs to occur in life science companies. And once that is made, people can begin to allocate resource appropriately to developing a portfolio of intellectual property. And we're going to come on later to talk about how this can be exploited and used. And once you begin to see it in that context, then I think it is a lot easier to justify and necessitate generation of a robust intellectual property portfolio. So I know Loren has some strong views on this as well, so I don't want to monopolize this discussion, but I'm interested to hear what you think, Loren. You're muted. Loren, I think you're still muted.
There we go. Sorry, I was muted by the organization too. Thank you, Adrian, for your comments. I strongly agree, and I do first need to extend my thanks as well to Mr. Jaiseelan and Mr. Padmanabhan. I'm so grateful to have the chance to participate today. I do have strong feelings in this area. Much of my experiences have been in the life sciences space, and I have seen in both pharmaceuticals and medical devices that, especially in today's world, it is too easy to copy without intellectual property. We live in a time of 3D printing. We live in a time of easy chemical copying. Without meaningful intellectual property, both in the markets you intend to sell in and the markets you intend to manufacture in, it's very easy to lose control of something that has great value to you and to your consumers. And indeed, I think that maintenance of a strong intellectual property regime promotes innovation on a national level, on an international level, that helps each of us individually. In the pharmaceutical space, the most recent figures that I could get a hold of indicate that all in, you're looking at a cost of 2.6 billion American dollars to create a single new drug and get it to market. 7 out of 8 candidates fail. If there is no exclusivity around that drug as it makes it out, there's nothing left for your company, right? There's no way to preserve your ability to go forward, to produce, to manufacture, to innovate new things. So I've seen intellectual property as being key to value, and Adrian's comment that it needs to be viewed as an investment is one that I think is one that takes time for some organizations to create a culture around. But once they do, it can become a huge value center. Companies I've worked for have seen assets that even assets that they think they initially start pursuing as a key program, but even assets that may fall a little bit by the side as their markets, as their opportunities mature, they found opportunities to license them at times for many millions of dollars, supporting then the key missions of the company. So creating a program where you're encouraging your inventors to develop new technology, disclose them to you, and then centrally planning and making decisions about where to protect them and how aggressively to protect them is critical for any company's survival and success.
I totally agree. And the point that Loren made about licensing opportunities for non-core assets is a very, very valid one. Loren, could you just make me the presenter for a while? I just want to share one overhead that I think would illustrate the point quite nicely.
I should just hold on 1 second here. Oh, there you go.
Okay, so you can see a funnel here, right?
I'm still on the tattoo.
I'm trying to show a information funnel.
There we go.
Okay, so this is the new paradigm for innovation in all industries and in the life science industry in particular. So the previous model was that one organization would control the innovation process from cradle to grave. So the research department would come up with a new idea, it would be developed, it would be marketed to largely passive consumers. But in the new open innovation paradigm, organizations are much more permeable and ideas flow in and out of the organization. So you have joint ventures working with universities, with other organizations, with other companies in different countries. You in-license technologies where they fit into your portfolio. You out-license things that are non-core to your central business activity. And all this is made possible by intellectual property. So I think a common misconception is that open innovation means an absence of intellectual property, whereas quite the contrary is the case. In an open innovation paradigm, formal intellectual property is vital in recording and memorializing who owns what. So it's impossible to play this game unless you have a strong awareness of intellectual property. And that is something I've seen with my clients very often, that they are focused on one therapeutic area, and what they are discovering has applications in either a different therapeutic area or a diagnostic technology, or even a completely unrelated technology if you're talking about a platform technology. And these represent vital licensing opportunities. And that is why engaging with quality intellectual property counsel from the very outset is so important, because they will, a patent attorney of the caliber of the colleagues we have in this panel, will be able to identify not just what you want to protect, but what could potentially be of value to somebody else from your intellectual property. And that is the real power of having a strong and strategically planned intellectual property portfolio.
Thank you, Adrian. Because due to paucity of time, let us move to the next question. But before we move, I would like to ask Samrat about one aspect of IP, because life cycle of a product plays an important role. So, for example, in biotech, the life cycle is very long as compared to high-tech industry. So, how IP plays an important role in lengthy product, the innovation or technology which has a long product life cycle. Over to Samrat.
Absolutely. Thank you, Goutam, for putting forward this question. I would like to thank, first of all, Mr. Jayasilan and Mr. Padmanabhan and IACC for organizing this seminar. So moving forward with the points which have been made by Adrian and Loren. So the life cycle of a product plays an extremely important role in to strategize what is the kind of IP which is required, and what would be the kind of leverage that you can get from such IP. So for a shorter life cycle product, for example, a software, which has a life cycle of, let's say, about 1 or 2 years, patents may play a role, but it's more of a combination of trade secrets, copyrights, patents, and the other intellectual property forms which will play a role. For pharmaceuticals, we are looking at a product life cycle which extends even beyond the 20-year term which is given by the law, which is why it's extremely important to strategize. And it's important to strategize the patents in the pharmaceutical business, because there are the chances of infringement and the chances of the non-innovator companies getting into this space is very high by invalidating your early stage patents. So if you look at the life cycle or the product life cycle of a pharmaceutical business, so in the early stage or the discovery stage, the innovator company makes some kind of lead compound or a compound class or some kind of chemical compositions which forms the basis for that the product. And at that stage, the company must file an initial set of core patent application which covers those classes of compounds. And these are the foundational basis for those compounds. However, at a later stage, when the development of the product is taking place and at the marketing stage, additional patents can also be filed to cover up specific formulations, specific drug combinations, specific delivery systems, such as in the form of nanoparticles or liposomal compositions or specific dosage forms. And beyond and IP rights continue to play a role beyond the patent term that is given of 20 years also. For example, trademark rights, they become extremely vital because for Indian stores, if you go to any Indian stores and you say, I want a Crocin. Crocin is the brand name for paracetamol. Or you say, I want azithromycin. Azithromycin is the brand name for azithromycin, which is a broad spectrum antibiotic. So even when the patents have expired, the continue keeps on leveraging on the trademark aspect to gain a competitive advantage. So the length of the product, because in life sciences industry, the length of the product and the product life cycle is extremely long. It's important to strategize different types of IP. It's important to combine different types of IP to gain a competitive advantage in this space.
Thank you, Samrat.
Yeah.
So moving
Could
to
I
the
could I just follow on from what Samrat has said there, Goutam, just very briefly? It's a very good point about the life cycle. So as Samrat has clearly explained, the development life cycle in pharmaceuticals is very long. And one of the points that Samrat made was the importance of the core IP, which is generated very early on in the research phase, but that will last until the expiry of the basic patent covering the drug. So it is vitally important that those are built to last, and built with the end user in mind as well. So generally, when we're talking about the pharmaceutical development cycle, at each of these points, which I've shown here, the order of investment would go up by at least an order of magnitude. So the model for a lot of life science companies is that they would take a compound to the next inflection point. So a typical one would be to take a compound to the point where it can be, where human trials are initiated. And when you get to that point, you need a different scale of investment. But the point is that the IP that the next participant in the food chain, so typically the technology might start off in a university, be developed by a biotech, be licensed to a major pharma. The IP is generated very, very early on in this scheme, and the importance grows exponentially as you move towards the right of this diagram. And I think that is something that is often overlooked with startups when they're generating their IP portfolio, that because budget is quite constrained in the early days, then the temptation is to cut corners when you are generating your initial filings. But that is a classic false economy, because that will usually prevent you from exiting to a major pharma or taking a product forward yourself. Because when these things are scrutinized for investment or for licensing, then people will look very, very hard at the quality of your IP.
Okay, thank you. Moving to the next question. Next point of discussion is creating an IP portfolio that serves as the business asset with strong competitive advantage. What really drives the strength of IP? So let me share some of my thoughts, and then I would request Adrian and Loren to pitch in. The first thing comes to my mind is the mindset of the leadership of the company. The company must consider IP cost as an investment, but not as an operating cost, because it pinches you. But as you know, when you know that is my investment, I need to I need to get benefit, I need to leverage IP at later point of time, things mindset will change. Second point comes to my mind is the strategy. And IP strategy must talk to the business strategy. IP, any IP portfolio that developed on purpose should give competitive advantage. Uh, in other words, there must be a business case behind every IP that you create. So IP strategy also plays a very important role when you want to have a competitive advantage. Recently, I was reading an article, specifically a statement given by none other than Bill Gates. Let me read out just a second. Let me. Uh, so he said, IP is, I'm just reading out the statement, IP is no longer simply the legal department's problem. CEOs must now be able to formulate strategies and capitalize on and maximize the value of their company's intellectual property asset to drive growth, innovation, and blah blah blah. It's a long statement, but uh, this is very important. So the strategy component, strategizing IP, and as and which is in sync with your business strategy, is extremely important. That would really strengthen. Third point comes to my mind is ability to see the future technology landscape. So patent application, you file it today and it become a potential tool after 3 to 5 years. And as maybe as a group, the lawyer and the company must ensure that IP remains relevant even after 3 to 5 years. You draft something, you get a grant, but those patent, those claims may not be relevant after 3 to 5 years in view of the changing technology landscape. So we need to foresee the technology landscape even while drafting an application. And I say here comes the role of experienced patent attorneys. Drafting specification is an art. I'll give you simple one example. Selection of words, is very important. Um, for example, if I say my claim contains heating at a temperature in the range of 5 to 10 degree or 50 to 60 degrees centigrade, and the same can be written as inner temperature, but these two have a completely separate meaning. So the concept, the scope of the claim changes. At a temperature means the ambient temperature should be 50 to 60. Inner temperature means the particular substance is heated up to that temperature. So selection of words play a very important role. And as an attorney, we or the even the innovator or the leadership of the company must have the ability to understand or visualize the implication of the broadening, or maybe implication of striking a balance between a broad claim and a claim which is enforceable. Sometime out of fantasy, we keep it as broad as possible, but which becomes susceptible to attack from in terms of opposition, in terms of revocation. Then fourth point that comes to my mind is the clean and consistent global prosecution. Suppose you have a patent application in India, and then you have several application globally. So in India, you are speaking something. You have a different kind of prosecution strategy, and you have a different prosecution strategy in US. Just to get a grant, expedited grant, you are saying something which is not inconsistent with the Indian prosecution, which can bring you in, put you in trouble. So therefore, consistent prosecution is also very important. And most important, I am a strong believer of that. If you do not want to file IP, don't file IP, but you should know how to leverage IP. That is most important part. Be it in licensing, be it out licensing, be it cross licensing, as the innovation. What was the name, Adrian? You mentioned innovation funnel or innovation.
Open innovation.
Open innovation. So in the funnel, there were so many holes. You do not know when you need to bring the some other license. For example, you need to bring a delivery mechanism from someone else, from a university, and which can be used, which can help you to deliver your drug. So that's the role of or strategy you need to play around for leveraging the IP. So now I would request Adrian to share your views, and after that, Loren.
Yeah, I think that was some excellent insights there, Goutam. And as you were speaking, a couple of points sprang to mind. So particularly about the role of the patent attorney in shaping the IP strategy. So the first question for any intellectual property exercise is not what can be protected, but what should be protected. So any intellectual property right is supposed to generate a commercially meaningful monopoly that puts you at an advantage. So that is the first goal. So if you have invented a molecule that is useful in the treatment of leukemia, the first objective should be to get as broad as possible protection for therapies directed towards leukemia. Okay, and the molecule is kind of secondary. That's how that's achieved. Then, of course, reality comes into play, and the law requires us to, be novel, inventive, all this kind of stuff. So you're kind of trying to operate in this overlap between what is desirable and what is possible. So that is our job as patent attorneys, to get this broad, commercially meaningful monopoly. And I think what's often overlooked is that monopolies are a tool for keeping competition away, and they're anti-competitive by their nature. And what your competition are interested in is not your patent, your IP. They're not interested particularly in your technology. They're interested in your customers. Okay, so if they have a competing technology that's also directed towards treatment of leukemia, they are interested in providing their therapy to those individuals as compared to yours. So that is going to be the primary consideration. And I think once you switch your thinking about IP from a kind of, what have we invented? Okay, let's write a document that describes that. Because pretty much anyone can write a document that describes a technology. But that is not the job of the patent attorney. The job of the patent attorney is to draft intellectual property that keeps competitors away, that maintains a broad monopoly for you to work your invention without fear of intrusion from third parties, and enables you to participate in these transactions that we have outlined. And the other point about, maybe we're going to come onto it later. Are we going to talk about freedom to operate later?
We'll be speaking later. Yeah.
Okay, I'll address that. But yeah, those are the thoughts that were triggered off when you were speaking, Goutam, and I'm interested to hear what Loren's view is on that.
Yeah, Loren, please.
Absolutely, Goutam. Thanks, Adrian. To me, the thoughts that were triggered when we talk about strength of IP, there needs to be kind of a culture of innovation in a company, a culture of investment in intellectual property, and a healthy respect for it. The companies I've seen to be most successful in developing valuable IP that builds, again, their company's value and provides meaningful protection over their product they start with the end in mind. They start when they're filing their intellectual property and beginning to prepare that portfolio. They're starting with the end of being a company that has, again, a nice fenced off space where they can operate, that keeps their competitors away in mind. And so they do invest in quality work even early on. It can be quite a sacrifice, especially for a small company. But again, looking to the pharmaceutical space, much can be lost even early on if quality work isn't undertaken. In the United States, for example, there's an opportunity for patent term extension that allows a drug company to extend the term of their patent past its normal 20-year life to recoup time that's lost in the approval process, both at the patent office and to a lesser degree at the FDA. That comes, if they're looking back to Adrian's slide from earlier, that comes at the very end of the patent's life, which is often when the drug has its highest sales and is of most value. Missteps early on can sacrifice that patent term extension time, cutting income for a company by hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases. I've seen drug companies fight over a couple of days or a couple of weeks of patent term because it means hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue for them. Also, when you're developing IP, because it is a holder of so much value, I see there's a lot of value in the little things. In counseling and working with my companies that are looking for financing or undergoing purchases, little seemingly inconsequential things that should have been taken care of as a matter of just day-to-day care can get in the way. You know, if an inventor hasn't signed an assignment document that they should have, or if they haven't signed a declaration that's due, little things can get in the way. So keeping your portfolio clean, keeping your assignments current and all your signature documents in place is important. And again, I guess the last piece on this one would be continued focus on quality. I've seen entire programs, IP programs, killed when what you can tell. I just imagine some poor harried attorney that forgets to paste a definition into an application that renders it useless by the time it hits the patent office. Quality and consistency in patent drafting is just mission critical. So I guess those would be the things that come to mind on that point, Goutam.
Yeah, thank you so much. So how much time is left, Samrat? Another 40 minutes? You're muted.
We have another 50 minutes.
50 minutes. Okay, so we need to leave some time for the question and answer also. We need to go a little fast. Now, on the same in the same direction, next is, as you know, IP is a bundle of rights, and choosing the correct IP is an art. To discuss this, I would request Samrat to share your view, and maybe followed by Adrian.
Sure. Adrian, can you just make me the presenter, because I'll want to share one slide with the audience.
You should be the presenter now.
Okay. Yes. So can you see the slide?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So every every product that you have in your hand would be a combination of intellectual property. And as Adrian correctly pointed out in the earlier part of the discussion, that it's not about what could be protected, but rather it's about what should be protected. So here, if you see this unique innovation in which there is an ophthalmic solution which has an kind of which is put into to which a device is kind of attached, which keeps the eyelids open. So the ophthalmic solutions can be protected in the form of a patent. The brand name of the company could be protected in the form of a trademark. The overall look and feel of this entire bottle this entire bottle along with the apparatus could be protected in the form of a design. And you could have a patent or a utility model for the specific attachment which keeps the eyelid open. Similarly, if you have got a very colorful user guide, that could be protected in the form of a copyright. And you may have a preferred list of suppliers, which could be a trade secret. So you have to intelligently play around with the different forms of IP to sort of get the maximum leverage from a product. So similarly, if you look at any kind of complex devices like a mobile phone, so the design of a mobile phone could be protected in the form of an industrial design. The name could be protected in the form of a trademark. The name of the company also in the form of a trademark. Then you have the user interface, which could be protected in the form of a copyright. And the technologies or the systems for receiving different kinds of information, or probably the methods for manufacturing the different components of the mobile phone could be protected in the form of patents. So ultimately, it's about choosing the kind of protection that you require and playing around with the different kind of protection within the limited budget that you have to get the maximum leverage from the different kind of IP and to create a kind of monopolistic situation which would enable you to keep the competitors out by using the different kinds of assets. So I think if Adrian would like to add on to that.
Thanks, Samrat. That was a good explanation of how different IP rights can tessellate together to provide really strong protection for a business position. The one thing I would add is quite often, especially in the life sciences, the innovation is an iterative and incremental process. So a compound is discovered and it's proposed to be of use in a certain pathological indication. Subsequently, it turns out that it's more useful in another indication. Then it turns out that within that indication, a certain class of patients respond better. So all these things are happening as part of the R&D department's everyday work. And in clinical trials, very often, it is shown that there is a clear distinction between groups of responders and non-responders. And these all provide valuable follow-on protection for the initial discovery. So I firmly advocate a little and often approach to filing. So instead of filing a huge mega application which attempts to cover everything with very limited support, I would prefer a more focused application, and then a couple of months down the line, a follow-on application, maybe an Indian national application, and then you have the choice whether to roll these up into a PCT application or only focus on some aspects of those. And I'm interested to hear what Loren thinks about this this kind of approach. But the approach also, it strikes a balance between early and late disclosure, because you want to get an early filing date, obviously, as quickly as possible to prevent your competitors getting a march on you. But if you file too early, you haven't properly worked out the details of your invention, and your application, your patent may be held bad for reasons of sufficiency, which is a requirement in most patent offices in one form or another around the world. So Loren, I just want to hand the conch shell over to you and get your steer on the little and often approach.
You're kind, Adrian. I'd also like to react to Samrat's slide 2, if that's all right. I thought there was a lot of power there. I've been on the other side, Samrat, where I was asked to help someone patent around someone else's intellectual property, who had been very wise in their use of different types. So I was first handed a utility patent or two that I had to evaluate, try to kind of steer around. And when I thought I'd found some clearance around those, then 3 or 4 design patents surfaced to pick up non-utility patent subject matter. Made it incredibly difficult to get around the device, get around the IP. So there can be a lot of power in using those different types of IP to create a fence out of different materials, as it were, to keep the marauders away. Which in that case was me. The unfortunate marauder. I didn't get through as quite as easily as I would have liked. Found a way, which was nice. But to Adrian's remarks, I very much am a fan of little and often as far as filings. I've seen companies try to cram everything into one big application, and for me, the risk of trying to of missing something or of then coming up with a further refinement the next week and being discouraged from repeating the exercise is too large. In the United States, it's so inexpensive to file a series of provisional applications that are additive, in the sense that, you know, I filed this week. A month and a half later, when I've refined the design, I can name another step or two. I add those paragraphs, I add another figure to describe those improvements. I file again. The filing fee is incredibly inexpensive, but I've now got a series of filings that then I can pick and choose from to determine what's valuable and what dates do I care about in the filing process. So I'm very much a fan of the more frequent filing with less of an emphasis on trying to say I want to create the be all end all patent. I think it also gives you an opportunity to say, again, if I had to go back to the fence metaphor, let's have a few. Let's have several patents that cover a technology instead of a single one, thus increasing the barrier and the difficulty for a competitor to take out your intellectual property, take out your protection. If they have to take out several patents as opposed to one, the cost and difficulty goes just through the roof. So I think that's a very solid and very wise filing strategy.
And I think what you said just there, that is what you're aiming for, is that when your competitor sees your IP portfolio, either they give up and think of something else to do, or think that it's easier to come to you for a license than it is to try and work around it. That's the position you want to be in.
Absolutely. I've seen that position too, again, where they come to you for a license, and an asset that was maybe not just off center in that fence can turn into an incredible driver of value. So.
So the classical example is the Gillette Mac 3. The small blade with a handle and a blade has 35 patents, and that also about a couple of years back. And they eliminated all the players from the market. So they had the greaves, the blade, progressive technology blade. So as the blade moves, the second blade comes closer to the skin. So the moisturizer dispensing system. So they have 35 patents around one small technology, and they literally have driven everyone out from the market. So coming back to the next part of our discussion is the capital efficient IP creation. So basic idea is cost and time reduction, how to reduce the cost, how to reduce the time. So let me share the Indian perspective. To start with, to begin with, everybody is aware IP is a cost intensive affair. However, with the help of various agreements between the countries, treaties, convention, patent prosecution time can be reduced, and prosecution cost even can be substantially optimized. In recent past, Government of India has taken several progressive decisions to expedite the prosecution. In last couple of years, the prosecution time has come down from 7 to 8 years to 3 to 4 years. And the mandate given by the government to patent office is to conclude the same in 18 months. And from filing the request for examination. Now, can you make, who was the last presenter? If you can make me the presenter.
I think Loren is the current. Yeah.
Yeah. So could you see my slide? Could you? I do not. Yes, you can see my slide.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yep,
I
it's
don't know.
there.
I am not able to see my slides only. Anyway, so this is see, these are the patent prosecution highway. So each one of us will speak. Loren, Adrian will also speak on this. But this is the kind of agreement, bilateral agreement, or separate agreement between 3-4 countries, which has made the life of an applicant extremely easy and convenient. So basic idea is to expedite the prosecution, rely on examination of one country by another, uh, and we can certainly rely on, invoke the patent prosecution highway, and use and optimize the cost. Suppose I will give you an example. Suppose you have a granted US patent, and if you want to file in Indonesia, Singapore, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, you do not have to go through once again an examination process in these respective countries. You can simply file a modified examination and pursue the granted claim. It will be allowed. So there are various prosecution strategies which can be looked at. I'll give you the Indian perspective. Can you see the slides? Because I can't see my own slides, but
Yes.
I'm just sharing. Okay. So now India has put a system in place which is called expedited examination, and which also covers the foreign applicant. And it is for whom? This for the startup. If any company has any applicant has selected Indian Patent Office, IPO is Indian Patent Office, selected as ISA or IPEA. If it is a micro, small, and medium enterprise (MSME), all applicants are natural person, and which includes one female applicant. So out of 4, if Adrian, Loren, Samrat, Goutam, and there is another applicant who is a woman, so we can, by virtue of the one applicant, woman applicant, we can expedite. So any government department, be it US government or UK government, any government, uh, if government is an applicant or including university and institution, they can also expedite. And patent prosecution highway currently being on trial basis with Japanese Patent Office. So the beauty of the expedited examination, the patent is granted as early as 84 days from the date of filing the request for examination. So sometimes it takes 84 days. That is the one of the rarest example, but mostly within a year it is granted, even less than year, 6 to 8 months. For the startup, I'll give very quickly. For the startup, if it is the 10 years, the company's age is less than 10 years, turnover is less than 100 crore, about $15 million, almost $14 million US dollar. It's an original entity. It is not a spin-off or a subsidiary, and if it is in the innovation space. So and for MSME, it should be, turnover should be 250 crore. 250 crore, about around 35 million US dollar. So then you have foreign applicant reduced fee. If it is a startup, that is also covers the foreign applicant, so you get a fee reduction of 80%, and for small entities like MSME, they get 50% reduction. So what are the documents required? So Indian government gives a startup certificate, and similarly, even some kind of certificate can be provided by any foreign applicant as per their country law. It can be expedited. So for small entities, so there is a certificate called Udyog Aadhaar registration. And similar, any document that can show, this is for foreign applicant, if they can show any document that the turnover is less than 250 crore rupees, so it can be we can expedite the examination. Okay, so let me how to close the slide sharing. Is it I think do you still able to see the slides? No. So okay, fine. So now I would request Adrian to share his thoughts on Euro PCT PPH, UK filing, and German utility model, and then I'll come back to Loren on track 1. Thank you. Over to Adrian.
Can you see my slides now?
Yes.
Okay. So as Goutam has said, there are a number of tricks that that we can use, and the EPO has also some of these opportunities to reduce costs. But the point I would stress is the majority of the costs that are involved in prosecution come later down the line through attorneys' fees in responding to objections raised by the patent offices. And what you can do is to anticipate and foresee the kind of objections that are likely to arise. So I've shown on the slide here where the typical costs are incurred in a patent life cycle. So obviously you have a tranche of costs that you incur at the drafting and filing stage. You have some bigger fees that are paid during for filing a PCT, and then it gets really expensive at the national patent application stage. But as the green line illustrates, the value of the IP is only at that point beginning to increase exponentially as you bring a product towards the market. So what I would advocate is devoting more resource to the initial filing, and particularly to the PCT filing, because at that stage it is not only the primary value creation point, that is when your IP is set down in tablets of stone, and it's generally impossible to change it after that point. So I would advocate sensible investment at that stage, and then you will greatly reduce your costs when it comes to prosecution at the other offices. And one thought, one idea is that looking at where your major market is going to be, so for an Indian innovative company in the biotech space, your major markets are probably going to be in the US, Europe, Japan, and China, as well as your domestic market. You can have a look at with your foreign attorneys at having your application in good shape for prosecution before those jurisdictions when you come to file your PCT application. And you will save yourself endless trouble before those offices if you include a few simple modifications to your patent application. So obviously everyone is familiar to a greater or lesser extent with the European patent system, and that can afford you protection in more than 40 countries. But the question that I would ask applicants is protection in all those jurisdictions really necessary? Do you need to protect your innovation in Serbia and Macedonia? No disrespect to those wonderful countries, but they represent relatively small markets on a European scale. And the European patent system is expensive, so the filing fees are costly, renewal fees are costly, and it can be a difficult office to prosecute in front of. So for defensive cases, you can obtain a good blocking position with just a choice of 2 or 3 of those countries. So if instead of filing a European patent application, you file a UK national application and a German national application or utility model, for a fraction of the cost, you can obtain protection in about 50% of the economies in Europe by GDP size. So I think that is for your crown jewel applications which are covering a product which you intend to license or bring to the market. You want broader protection. You will need protection in a lot of different European countries. But for applications whose function is more defensive in nature, you can get good value for money if you consider the possibilities that these national applications offer. So another thing I have advocated is, in addition to filing Indian domestic applications, if you file a UK application after obtaining a foreign filing license from the Indian office, this can provide a very valuable not only blocking position in the UK, but it provides you can get early grant of a UK application, and that can be used to accelerate other countries through the PPH. And as Loren said, the filing fees in the UK, well, like in the US and India, it's not very expensive, it's very cost effective. So this is an option that I have often used with Indian clients and Indian applicants. And what else do I want to say? In the international phase, I think it's worth taking advantage of the possibility of making central amendments to the claims, either under Article 19 or during international preliminary examination. So that can be a very good way of bringing your claims into shape, and then it's kind of it's much less cost effective. It's much more cost effective to do that once centrally than to do it 20 or 30 times in different offices around the world. So,
Adrian, may I just interfere for a second, because we do not have much time and we need to cover a lot. If we can briefly share the thoughts, and I think we need to skip some of those discussion points today. We have 15 minutes left.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll shut up and let someone else talk in that case.
Goutam, did you want me to talk about track 1 still, just very briefly?
So very briefly, if you can, that would be interesting thing. Within a minute, if you can complete the track 1 concept.
That's moving. The USPTO guarantees you can complete track 1 in a year. I'll work on the minute.
Yes, so 1 minute, yeah.
It's kind of a unique time before the U.S. Patent Office. There are now more ways than I've ever seen available to expedite examination. You can get expedited examination for free if you're in specific types of cancer treatment, if you're working on a COVID-19 treatment, or you can pay your way in using a track 1 examination, by which the Patent Office tells you that they will work to have you disposed of one way or another within a year. I've got the current statistics in front of me, and I won't take the time to put the slide up, but they're moving much faster than that. Actually, they're often getting to final disposition in 5 or 6 months. And the majority of the cases that they're seeing in track one are allowed. So a strategy, if you need a patent quickly, If you happen to be in the right technology area, you can get this free. If not, pay a couple $1,000s, get track 1 examination. Takes about a month for it to be admitted into the program, but then you'll almost immediately after that begin to see office actions. You could have a patent granted in the US in 6 to 7 months, ready for the patent prosecution highway to enter across the world. It's a time-saving strategy, but Goutam, I'm convinced more and more that it's also a dollars-saving strategy that pushes some of the costs up front, but decreases the total spend on intellectual property by getting it done quickly.
Yes. So what we would do, we can pick up only one aspect of the remaining IP discussion around IP transaction, and then will pick up some of those questions. So initially we thought of discussing the university private public partnership model, and we thought of Adrian and Loren would share their views on technology transfer offices that will not take up right now. So next would be we can touch upon very quickly on FTO and valuation. Let me start the valuation component. I'll not take more than 2 minutes, and maybe we can spend about 2-3 minutes on FTO. Adrian and Samrat would share their views. Then we'll go for the question answer. So IP is an asset, as all of you know, and like any other tangible property, which can be sold, which can be rented. But before we sell, we must know the value of for which can be basis of effective negotiation. Now, if you do not know the actual value of my IP, I may quote undervalue to a potential licensee or assignee, or this could be other way around too. Because of the exorbitant value perceived by me, there will be no taker of IP. So we have been doing a lot of valuation, and we have our affiliate firm, Sadhguru Management Consultant, we are helping various companies, startups to value their technology. In fact, Adrian he has its competency in technology licensing. I would request Adrian quickly share his views on valuation, and maybe few words on a few sentences on valuation and how to do it.
Yeah, I would have a few words to say on IP valuation. It's not something that I get involved with directly. Like K&S Partners, we usually rely on specialist organizations who do that. But as you are aware, probably the audience, there are a number of methodologies for doing that. There's a market value method, the cost method, discounted cash flow method, income or economic benefit method. So all these different methodologies can be used to obtain a valuation of IP. So my experience of using IP as in transactions is more from the generation and the actual transactional side rather than the valuation side.
Okay, so we'll take after this one question, we'll discuss one point on FTO. I would request Adrian to take up what is the requirement, a brief about FTO, and then we'll take up few question. One question, first question, I would direct it to Adrian on what is your view on IPR generic pharma. So once you are through with the FTO, then we can go to the IPR in generic pharma. Again to Adrian and Loren.
Are you seeing my slide now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm very glad that you have asked me this question, Goutam, because this, I was thinking about this. We had a preliminary discussion, and Samrat raised a very good point, which is that a lot of businesses are not fully aware of the distinction between freedom to operate and intellectual property. So I've attempted to show these on this transparency. So I like to think of FTO as your shield. So FTO is essentially a de-risking activity. So the question that an FTO study aims to answer is, would the proposed activity infringe a valid intellectual property right of a third party? So that is essential to conduct for any life science business, because whether or not you are persuaded by our foregoing discussion about the value of a patent portfolio, you cannot ignore IP, because if you just go merrily out into the world and launch a new product or service, there is a very real possibility that you will infringe someone else's intellectual property. So what I've shown here is the distinction between the two activities. So FTO, as I've said, is a de-risking activity. It does not generate rights for you. All it gives you is a degree of comfort that you will be able to conduct a certain activity without infringing someone else's IP. And it requires a specialist search. So if I contact Goutam and explain that a client wants to launch a new form of omeprazole in the Indian market, having a formulation, he will conduct a search directed towards valid patents that are in force in India. And then he will provide his opinion about my activities and the relevance of the identified documents to those. So having a patent is a completely different kettle of fish. So your patent is like your sword. So it is an asset building exercise and it gives you a proprietary position. But having a patent tells you nothing about your ability to work your development. So it is perfectly possible to have a patent for a product which nevertheless would infringe a third party's intellectual property. So it needs a different kind of search, and patent searches, novelty searches would be for global disclosures rather than country specific. And you need to go through the application process that we have alluded to earlier. So I think that's important to stress, and hopefully, Samrat, you are happy that I have laboured that point enough. Sorry, Goutam, I kind of forgot what the original question was.
Yes, that was the original question, and thank you so much. And now, because I would request you and Loren to take up one question, which is come from Mr. Muthukrishnan. He is asking, what is your view of IPR in generic pharma?
Okay, do you want to kick off with this one, Loren?
Glad to. I guess my initial reaction here is in my interactions with generic pharma companies, I think that the most famous quote that I've been aware of is that their legal department was their research department in some cases, where they would look first to IP rights of others to determine the availability of product types or new products for them. Highlights the importance of having strong IP, where some generic pharma companies find a new opportunity by being able to destroy a competitor's IP to open up a new market for them to expand in. Opportunities, though, there are opportunities for a generic pharma to seek their own protection around new formulations, new dosage forms, to drive, again, company value and give themselves an opportunity to create their own exclusivity. So that's, I guess, my initial reaction is IPR in generic pharma is important for those two reasons. One, can I find a new market due to someone else's poor patenting or just again poor quality patents, and can I create my own exclusivity to stave off other competitors?
Mm-hmm. I would add to what Loren has said that the distinction between generic pharma and innovator is It used to be quite stark 20 years ago, but now I would say it's kind of it's more blurred and on the point of vanishing altogether. So you have companies like Novartis, which has Sandoz, world's largest generic company, as a subsidiary. And generics companies, IP is of paramount importance, and it depends where you are sitting in the value chain. If you are providing commodity type products, then obviously freedom to operate is important, and you've got to look at the thicket of patents that exists around a product, the process patents. And Indian pharma companies and chemists are especially ingenious at developing workaround processes for evading infringement of process patents. But as those companies seek to move up the value chain, as Loren correctly said, they will develop new formulations of known compounds which have benefits. So they are starting to innovate, and then the balance will shift from purely defensive freedom to operate position to a proprietary position as well. So I think the IP landscape for generics companies is one of the most fascinating areas that I deal with, because the patent landscape is very complex, and the commercial relationships that these companies have with partners in other countries is very, very complex as well. You have the interplay of regulatory issues, so you have this tension between needing to avoid infringing of originator patents and at the same time demonstrate bioequivalence. So these are all very, very nuanced and interesting issues which we deal with very, very often. But I mean, the broad point is, as generic companies seek to move up the value chain, they will rely less on their shields and more on their swords.
Okay. So next question again, I would like to direct it to Adrian. Data generated during the clinical trial, what is considered IP in this process? How best to protect the license, especially from the regulatory and commercial standpoint? This is from IACC itself, Mr. Ravi Kumar.
This is an excellent question. So this is very often the case that during conduct of a clinical trial, that observations are made that either a class of patient is responding better or worse to a particular therapy. And if one can link that with a characteristic of that patient population, then you have a new invention, basically.
That's right.
So I think it comes down, the other issue you have in this area, that clinical trials are, they're difficult to keep secret, particularly the participants have to sign forms for informed consent and this kind of thing. But nevertheless, there is some case law in Europe and the UK that observations that are made as a result of clinical trials can be considered not disclosed to the public and fully patentable. So I think it's a really excellent question from Mr. Manikam, and I'm interested to hear Loren's and Samrat's view on this as well.
Samrat, do you want to go ahead? I keep talking.
Absolutely. Basically, the data which is generated during the clinical trials has to be, in India, the method of diagnosis is not considered a patentable subject matter. which is carrying on from what Adrian had to say. So in Europe, it may be considered, you can link it as a new invention, but unless and until we link it to a product or a process, in India, it's really difficult to generate a new invention from the data which is generated in a clinical trial. However, if there are methods of analysis or systems for analysis of large amount of data which is there, if some innovation around that space is generated, there are possibilities of generating IP out of those aspects.
Yeah, I think particularly where you have an observation that there are responders and non-responders within the cohort, and you can then find a particular biomarker which distinguishes the two. That will often not be disclosed as part of the trial. And in Europe, there is a form of claims language that we can use to protect that. And that is very valuable in the era of personalized medicine that we're entering.
Yes.
So virtually all new products that are approved at the FDA now will require some kind of companion diagnostic or pre-diagnosis step, which indicates whether the patient is suitable for this or not. So I think not only is it possible and valuable from a public health perspective, but I think it's commercially very desirable as well.
So I think we can take up the last question, and I can respond to that question of Mr. Manikam. How to identify if the value report provides the correct near value as an inventor? So it's valuation is a perceived value, and it can be perceived, of course, based on certain facts, and it is a dynamic as well. So when you start your innovation in the beginning of the innovation cycle, when you file patent application and you value your technology, there would be one kind of valuation. But when all are granted, and then the valuation would certainly go very high. So it is first is very dynamic. Second is it is a perceived. Third is it based on certain facts and figure. So it's very difficult to say that the value, whatever I have decided, is correct, but it is an indicative in nature, which is based on certain assumption, certain comparison. When you compare with the market method, when you adopt the market method, so you decide that okay, so in past this kind of royalty was obtained from this kind of technology transfer, and what is the improvement, and based on certain factor you you perceive a certain value. So it is again, it is a perceived and based on certain assumption. However, with statistical method, risk factors and other thing, people have made it nearly correct. The value that is come out from the valuation, established method of valuation, those are almost nearly correct. It cannot be 100% correct, and it is dynamic as well. So I think with that we comes to an end for such a wonderful session. I wish we would have much more time, because we had to leave housekeeping tips. We have left some of those interesting discussion point on commercialization, then due diligence, and university and company partnership model. What are the best model? Maybe sometime in future we can organize another interaction, and we can bring up those left out discussion points. And thank you very much, Mr. Padmanabhan and Jayasilam, Sujata, and thank you IACC British Group. Thank you Adrian, thank you Loren, thank you Samrat, and all the participants for such making this event a fantastic and productive event. And and now it is over to you, IACC, to formally conclude the webinar.
Thank you, Mr. Goutam, and really it is a wonderful, productive program. And we have noted your comments that to have one more seminar is always possible. Most of our members would be interested in learning the commercialization of IP. Always it is important, as this program was very eye-opener for most of us, because we normally as entrepreneurs think business is all about doing sales, but the panelists very clearly told IP is the IP is not at all an expense, it is only a value, and it is a real asset. Very nice. And we all know it was it was mentioned clearly that a very good definition I learned today from Adrian, that to IP is to have a commercial meaningful monopoly. That objective of any IP is to have a commercially meaningful monopoly. Well said, sir. It has gone into our mind. Very nice. And of course, thanks to Mr. Loren. He has also put it very nice. IP is a bundle of rights, and choosing the correct IP is the real challenge. Which we understood it's a very limited time, and you could do your best. So on behalf of IACC, I would like to thank each and every panelist, right from Dr. Goutam Bhattacharyya for a very well moderating this session, giving opportunities for everybody, and above all, managing the time, and to Mr. Samrat Ganguly, helping him for the panel. Our special thanks to Mr. Loren Hulse and Mr. Adrian Bradley, because our timing is different. In spite of that, you have come all the way through live, and you have shared your expertise with us. IACC, and on behalf of the K&S Partners and British Business Group, I would like to formally thank both of you specially for your contribution. And definitely, I'm sure there would be a lot of future interaction from our team with you both. IACC is organized a couple of days before a program on labor law, which was very much needed today because of lockdown. A lot of issues are going. A lot of commercial business could not happen. Today we had a proper program on intellectual property rights. As we all know, business is not just doing marketing or sales. It's all about creating value and capitalizing the value. That is the net of any business today. For that, IPR is very, very important. We understood. So in this month itself, we have few more programs. We have IACC has arranged, which includes a session, interactive sessions with Indian Embassy and Consulate in USA. There would be a workshop on POSH, and also a discussion on data business analytics. Information would be sent to all members. Wait for the time and schedule. With this, I thank once again on behalf of Mr. Padmanabhan and the IACC. I thank all the panel members, all the delegates who have attended, all these secretarial staffs who assisted this, all the members who have participated in that. Thank you all. Good evening.
Yeah. With
this, Sujata, if you want to tell anything, you can tell, and we can leave the program.
I'm fine, sir. Thank you all. We will wind up the session. Thanks to all the panelists and the speakers and the K&S partners for their support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.